acting takes courage. It's not about, how you look only, but Meryl Streep doesn't care how she looks. She just surrenders to the truth of the character. Not every...
Hollywood is a prowling beast, and not every star can withstand its menacing glare. Once the darlings of the 1970s silver screen, here are 10 best actors of the 1970s who have fallen off the radar of time. Number 10, Linda Harrison. Right off the bat, we're starting off with Linda Harrison, a woman destined to shine like a star, at least according to her mother, who was convinced Linda would rise to the top. Maybe it was written in the stars, or perhaps it was that inherent ability to turn heads and win beauty contests everywhere. Either way, Linda Harrison was on the fast track to fame, even if she didn't know exactly where that road would end. Born on the 26th of July, 1945, Linda Harrison was the third of 5 daughters of Isaac Harrison, a nurseryman, and his wife, Ida Virginia Melson, a beautician. From a young age, Linda was different. She excelled in various forms of art, and her mother, Ida, seeing something special, once shared in an interview that she knew Linda was destined for stardom when she was just 5 years old. Describing young Linda as a little ham, she quickly enrolled her daughter in ballet and acrobatic classes. But it didn't take long for Linda to find her rhythm there. At 6, she was already performing on stage and loving every minute of it. A few days later, she attended Berlin's Buckingham Elementary School before winning first prize at the Del Mar Chicken Festival Talent Contest with her acrobatic performance. And no, she didn't stop there. She won several beauty contests around her and was praised for being a skilled acrobatic dancer all before high school. Frankly speaking, her goal was simple: use beauty contests as a stepping stone to Hollywood fame. And surprisingly, it was actually working. As a teenager, she made a bit of a splash on local TV and took on proper dramatic roles in her high school plays. To fast-track her goal, Linda moved to New York City to try her luck as a model, an unsuccessful venture that eventually made her homesick, returning to Maryland in less than a year. She retraced her steps, stuck to her earlier strategy, and re-entered the beauty pageant circuit and won the 1964 Miss Delmarva contest as Miss Berlin at the age of 19. Linda's gorgeous looks and undeniable charm eventually caught the attention of Mike Medavoy, an agent at the General Artist Corporation. Impressed by her talent, he knew she had to be in pictures and arranged for a meeting at 20th Century Fox. Her screening test impressed the studio, earning her a standard 60-day option agreement and the opportunity to learn from Fox's acting coach, Pamela Denova. Soon, she met Fox's vice president of production, Richard D. Zanuck, who awarded her a 7-year contract with the studio in November 1965. And the rest, as they say, was history. Growing from strength to strength, Linda was poised to become one of the biggest stars of her generation. Audiences and industry insiders loved her work, and she was featured in one of the biggest blockbusters at the time, The Planet of the Apes. However, despite her early promise and dramatic rise to fame, Harrison's career did not soar as many expected. Whether it was bad timing, poor management, or simply not landing the right roles, Harrison's momentum began to fade. She wasn't able to land the big jobs, and as her career progressed, her star power burned out, leading her to take a sabbatical for several years until 1972, when she attempted a serious comeback. Hoping to land the role of Roy Schneider's wife in Jaws, she urged her husband, Richard D. Zanuck, now a renowned producer, to give her the part, but it wasn't to be. Director Steven Spielberg ultimately chose actress Lorraine Gary because he felt Linda wasn't the right fit. Looking back, I can't help but feel puzzled about Linda Harrison's story. She had the charm, the talent, and even the connections to become one of the biggest stars in her era. Yet she never really soared to her predicted heights. Perhaps she was born in the wrong era.
I'm smart and poor.
What makes you so smart?
I wouldn't go for coffee with you.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't ask you.
Well, that's what makes you stupid.
Number 9. Ally McGrath. If there's one woman who burst onto the Hollywood scene in the 70s with a bang, it has to be Ally McGrath. After her breakout role portraying Brenda Potemkin in 1969's Goodbye Columbus, McGrath quickly became one of the most talked about new actresses of her generation. First, she won the prestigious Golden Globe Award for Most Promising Newcomer and landed a major role in Love Story in the next year, opposite none other than Ryan O'Neal. Saying it became a colossal hit is a massive understatement. As one of the highest-grossing movies in U.S. history, her performance earned her widespread appraisals by critics and audiences alike. She also won a Golden Globe Award for Best Actress in a Motion Picture, Drama, and a nomination for the Academy Award for Best Actress. By the time she wrapped up the third film in her career, McGrath had already reached a level of fame that most actors only dream of. She was voted the top female box office star in the world and was honored with a hand and footprint ceremony at Grauman's Chinese Theater. It seemed like nothing could stop her rise to superstardom. But then, quite unexpectedly, things began to change after starring opposite Steve McQueen in 1972's The Getaway. After a 5-year break from acting, she landed a role in Convoy alongside Chris Christopherson and a few others like Players and Just Tell Me What You Want, but none of these captured the same magic as her earlier work. Soon she drifted from the big screen and got into television, including soap operas. But again, her success in the niche was also short-lived, leaving everyone to wonder why her career suddenly faltered. Personal struggles, difficulty to work with, these and many more were speculated to be the reason, but the million-dollar question was finally answered in her autobiography, Moving Pictures. She revealed that she had struggled with alcohol and other addictions, which took a severe toll on her personal and professional life. She also revealed that she sought treatment for the former at the Betty Ford Center, which also explained her shocking retreat from Hollywood limelight for a few years. But hey, there's light at the end of the journey. McGrath's acting career may have dimmed, but she found a new purpose in her fiery passion for animal welfare. In July 2006, she filmed a public service announcement for PETA, encouraging people to take their pets with them during wildfires. She also penned the foreword for the 2008 book Paw Prints of Katrina, about the largest pet rescue in U.S. history by Best Friends Animal Society. Plus, she is also a bona fide U.S. ambassador for Animals Asia and has reclaimed a devoted lover of Scottish Terriers, with a half a dozen said to be under her roof. Recognized for her lifelong advocacy in promoting animal welfare, she received the Humane Education Award from Animal Protection of New Mexico for promoting animal welfare. So you see, there is always a silver lining. I can't say the same for our next guy, though.
Sir, I have the honor to request you will accept my resignation, effective forthwith.
Resignation from what?
Her Majesty's secret.
Number 8. George Lazenby. George Lazenby might not be a household name, but for a brief moment, he was the world's most iconic secret agent. As the second actor to portray the legendary 007, Lazenby starred in the 1969 film On Her Majesty's Secret Service, hoping to fill the boots of Sean Connery. At first, it felt perfect. He was younger, more energetic, and was always seen sporting several Bond elements, such as a Rolex Submariner wristwatch and a Savile Row suit, which had been ordered but not collected by Connery himself. With only a single film under his belt, his time as Bond is the shortest of any actor in the series. But let's not forget about this infamous piece of history for a second. What else did Lazenby accomplish after this legendary role? Anything even close? Exactly, nothing. Born in 1939 in South Wales, Lazenby's early years were far from easy. He even had an unsuccessful operation that left him in the hospital for 18 months with only half a kidney. Plus, his parents weren't rich. He had to work various jobs as a teenager, including as a car salesman and mechanic. His quest for a better life saw him move to London, where he was luckily spotted by a talent scout. Quickly, he ventured into modeling and became super successful, earning north of £25,000 per year, a big sum at the time, and featuring in a Fry's chocolate bar commercial. By 1966, he was even voted top model of the year. Oddly enough, his biggest break came in the most unexpected way. While getting a haircut, Lazenby caught the eye of James Bond producer Albert R. Broccoli, who saw him in a commercial and thought he had potential. Honoring the invite, Lazenby impressed at his Bond audition, particularly when he accidentally punched a stunt coordinator in the face, showing just the right amount of aggression for the role. After the movie, however, Lazenby's performance was met with mixed reviews, although some critics praised the fresher vibe he came with. Despite being offered the chance to return as Bond, Lazenby turned it down. Despite pleas from directors and even his co-stars, Lazenby believed the character would eventually be irrelevant and that he didn't want to go down with a sinking ship. However, this decision backfired. Lazenby struggled to find significant work in Hollywood afterward, and the Bond franchise grew in strength. He was labeled difficult to work with, and after several unsuccessful ventures, the public painted Lazenby as a one-hit wonder. In 1973, the actor revealed that he had spent all of the money he had earned from playing Bond, had experienced 2 nervous breakdowns, and had become an alcoholic. The final nail in the coffin came on the day Bruce Lee died. Lazenby was offered $10,000, which is about $70,000 today, to feature with the latter on the Golden Harvest film Game of Death, but the plan collapsed after Lee's sudden death. At that point, Lazenby knew his time in the spotlight was over. He only made a few modest film appearances before shifting his sight to business ventures and real estate investment. Number 7. Peter Lawford. Is there anyone who better embodies the belief that Hollywood is more than simply glitter and gold than Peter Lawford, a man whose polished public image obscured the turbulent reality that led to his downfall? We don't think so. On the surface, Peter Lawford had it all: a successful career, a charming life, and a marriage into one of the most highbrow families in American history. His name was synonymous with old Hollywood glamour and the quintessential symbol of the era's seemingly intertwining worlds of film, politics, and high society. He was everything his peers could possibly wish for, and more. Born in London on September 7, 1923, Lawford moved to America as a child. And like many of his peers who weren't born into the industry, his golden opportunity came by chance when, in 1938, a talent scout spotted him during a casual trip through Los Angeles. But if you think that was lucky, wait till you find out the aftermath of World War II played right into his hands. Yep, you heard it. After the dreadful war came to an end, films with British military themes were in hot demand, and Hollywood was churning them out. Lawford, the perfect fit for such themes, was one of the few men who benefited from this twist, and he found a niche playing military personnel, often in uncredited roles. He had brief appearances in movies like Mrs. Miniver and Eagle Squadron, both in 1942, where he appeared as a pilot. Following the fast track to stardom, it wasn't long before Lawford landed his first significant role in a major production, playing a snobbish bully in A Yank at Eton, alongside Mickey Rooney, and also in 1942. The film's success at the box office raised his profile, making him a recognizable face in Hollywood, and one to be taken very seriously. MGM, one of Hollywood's most prestigious studios, eventually came calling the following year with a bumper-long contract. Signing was a no-brainer. At first, the studio played it safe. He played a young soldier during World War II in the film The White Cliffs of Dover, before featuring prominently in 1945's The Picture of Dorian Gray, the latter of which earned him widespread appraisal. He even topped a Modern Screen magazine readers poll in 1946 as the most popular actor in Hollywood. With established stars like Clark Gable and James Stewart away at war, Lawford emerged as a new romantic lead, receiving thousands of fan letters each week. His smooth, aristocratic demeanor made him an ideal fit for MGM's star-studded lot, further solidifying his place in Hollywood's elite. But while you'd think his life was perfect, Lawford's career trajectory came tumbling down when he married Patricia Kelly in 1954 and became part of the politically influential Kennedy family. Remember the Rat Pack group of entertainers led by Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin? Lawford's newfound popularity and ties with the Kennedy family led to his invitation to the group. However, when Lawford's friendship with Sinatra deteriorated after he failed to obtain President John F. Kennedy's appearance at a Sinatra-hosted political event, the actor felt betrayed and cut ties with Lawford, effectively blacklisting him from the elite. It was a massive implosion for Lawford. He appeared in a few notable films during the 1960s, but his work never recaptured the prestige or success he had enjoyed earlier in his career. By the end of the decade, Lawford was nearly broke and suffered from the effects of alcoholism and heavy drug usage. His marriage to Patricia ended in divorce, and subsequent relationships collapsed because of his financial problems and substance abuse. It was so bad that most of his friends left him, and the only people he had were other dealers who took advantage of him. By the 1980s, Lawford's career was largely over, and his name was overshadowed by the troubles in his personal life. He eventually passed away on Christmas Eve in 1984 at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, age 61, from cardiac arrest. The official reports say his death was caused by kidney and liver failure, likely birthed from years of heavy alcohol and drug use. Though his name has largely been buried under the sands of time, his contributions to Hollywood have not been entirely forgotten. He was honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame at 6920 Hollywood Boulevard for his impact on the television industry.
My chocolate! My beautiful chocolate! Don't just stand there, do something! Help, please.
Number 6. Gene Wilder. Contrary to what you might think, Hollywood stars don't always fade away because of nasty scandals, bad acting, poor choices, or pits of controversy. Sometimes life just happens, and for Gene Wilder, it was a combination of personal turmoil and a change of priorities. From a young age, Wilder was passionate about acting, especially for comedic roles. At 8 years old, when his mother was diagnosed with rheumatic fever, the young comedian would spend hours making jokes at home to cheer her up. And guess what? His fiery passion for the art only grew from strength when he saw his sister perform on stage. He was so fascinated that he asked her acting teacher to take him on as a student, a request that was humorously deferred until he was 13. But like every worthy dream, Wilder's desire to make it big in the industry wasn't without its challenges. His mother, sensing his potential, sent him to the Black Fox Military Institute in Hollywood, but it was a nightmare in disguise. He was picked on, bullied, and assaulted for being the only Jewish boy. The experience was too painful to bear. He had to return to Milwaukee and hope he makes a break working in the local theater community, where he eventually played Balthazar in a production of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. After graduating from Washington High School in 1951, Wilder was drafted into the U.S. Army in 1956. He served as a paramedic in the Department of Psychiatry and Neurology at Valley Forge Army Hospital near New York City so he could continue his acting studies. But just as soon as things started to look up, Wilder was given the most painful blow of his life thus far, the death of his mother in 1957. It was a dark moment for him, but it refueled his resolve to make his mark in the acting world. Luckily, the stars finally aligned. A few years after his big break in the 1960s, Wilder became one of the most popular actors in the old era. He was praised for being a versatile actor and for his witty comedic genius. With films like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, Young Frankenstein, and Blazing Saddles, Wilder was delivering hit after hit, earning several awards and nominations throughout the 1970s. But as he stood at the height of his career, little did he know that an unexpected wave of events would soon change everything. While filming Sidney Poitier's Hanky Panky in 1981, Wilder met Saturday Night Live star Gilda Radner, and from mere friends to a budding romance, the duo soon became inseparable. They eventually got married in 1984 after Radner divorced her then-husband. But their happiness was sadly short-lived. She suffered multiple miscarriages and was later diagnosed to have ovarian cancer. After an intense battle with the illness and brief moments of remission, the star tragically died in 1989, leaving Wilder utterly devastated. Grief-stricken, the comedian became disillusioned with the entertainment industry and decided to step back from acting. He dedicated his life to raising awareness about cancer and co-founded the Gilda Radner Ovarian Cancer Detection Center in Los Angeles and Gilda's Club, a support group for those affected by cancer. By the early 2000s, Wilder had all but retired from acting. His final performance was a guest role on the television show Will and Grace in 2003, which earned him a Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Guest Actor in a Comedy Series. Number 5. Tippy Hedren. When people talk about Hollywood's golden era, the first things that come to mind are the legendary stars, juicy scandals, fiery romances, and an impressive lineup of unforgettable films. But what about the darker realities behind the scenes? The power dynamics in the entertainment industry were heavily skewed in favor of studio heads, directors, and producers, and so often wielded their influence with ruthless authority, leaving stars at their mercy. Like war, a single misstep could be fatal. Trivial matters like refusing to act in specific roles or comply with certain beauty demands could end a career. From dismissals to blacklists, directors constantly threatened their stars, and this environment created a tense situation where many actors felt compelled to do whatever was necessary to keep their jobs. For many women in the industry, this ordeal meant compromising their values, facing harassment, or being subjected to various forms of manipulation. Unfortunately, this was the case for Tippy Hedren, a woman who witnessed firsthand the harsh realities of Hollywood's power dynamics after crossing paths with one of its most powerful figures, Alfred Hitchcock. Before entering the industry, Hedren was a pretty bigwig in fashion. Her face graced the covers of magazines like Glamour and Life, and she was one of the most sought-after models at the time. But her life changed in 1961 when she appeared in a television commercial that caught the eye of none other than Alfred Hitchcock, one of the most influential directors of old Hollywood. Clearly mesmerized by her looks and charm, Hitchcock desperately wanted her in his next big project. She was the final piece in the puzzle, and he wasn't going to take no. On her part, Hedren quickly made waves in the film industry, starring in Hitchcock's suspense thriller The Birds in 1963. Her performance gained widespread acclaim and earned her a Golden Globe Award for New Star of the Year. Refusing to rest on her laurels, she followed the tradition of another compelling role in Hitchcock's next drama, Marnie, in 1964, putting her on a fast track to the highest ceiling in the industry. Over the years, she would go on to appear in more than 80 films and television shows, including notable networks like Charlie Chaplin's final film, A Countess from Hong Kong, and later projects such as I Heart Huckabees. Yet, despite having one of the most promising starts the industry has ever seen and racking a host of memorable performances, why do you think her name has fallen off the radar of time? At first, Hedren found her work with Hitchcock to be exhilarating. The filming of The Birds involved a demanding schedule, allowing her only one afternoon off each week, and for a while she relished the challenge and appreciated the opportunity. But soon, Hitchcock's behavior began shifting in troubled ways. His interest in her seemed to go beyond mere professional mentorship and began to take on a more obsessive nature. As they moved into their second collaboration, Marnie, Hitchcock's fixation on the actress became unbearable. He became more possessive and kept her far away from the rest of the cast and crew, all to keep her in his clutches. He even made her eat specific meals. Just like that, what started as an exciting professional opportunity for Hedren turned into a nightmare. It was clear that the director was not only obsessed with her, but was also determined to control every aspect of her life, both on and off the set, and even coerce her into being in a relationship with him. When Hedren finally reached her breaking point, everything changed. In the 60s, challenging Hitchcock was unthinkable, but there she was, young and seemingly naive, defying him and firmly stating that Marnie would be their last film together. Rattled, Hitchcock boldly declared that he would make an example of her by threatening to destroy her career if she indeed left after their second production together. He also took advantage of the fact that Hedren had a daughter to support and aging parents who relied on her. But in spite of his threats, Hedren was resolute. She requested to be released from her contract, which Hitchcock refused. Instead of letting her go, he kept Hedren bound to a restrictive contract that prevented her from accepting other roles, effectively putting her career on ice. For nearly 2 years, she was paid to do nothing, her talent wasted, and her reputation slowly fading from Hollywood's collective memory. While Hedren did eventually return to the screen in various roles, none ever reached the level of acclaim she had achieved with Hitchcock. A sad end for a woman who dared to challenge the status quo.
I can't breathe in this thing!
Number 4, Rick Moranis. With his memorable glasses and quirky charm, Rick Moranis became one of the most beloved comedic actors of old Hollywood. Fans loved him for his refreshing, awkward persona and the way he quickly made his name among comedic giants. Remember him as Louis Tully on Ghostbusters, or his performance on Spaceballs, where he parodied Darth Vader as the pint-sized, helmet-wearing Dark Helmet? For years, he won the hearts of millions worldwide through his unique ability to blend subtle humor with exaggerated antics. But while only a few actors in the niche were as loved as Moranis, I personally think his comedic style can be likened to another comedy icon, Gene Wilder. Yes, the Gene Wilder. Both actors perfectly balanced absurdity with serenity, creating characters that were ridiculous yet profoundly human. Plus, they were both lovable oddballs, and that is why it is so sad that they both shared an anticlimactic exit from the industry at the height of their fame. Moranis began his career as a radio DJ while still in high school, quickly moving up the ranks to have his own show where he wrote, produced, and performed. Gaining traction in radio, he later got a gig on TV, where he linked up with the Canadian series SCTV back in 1976. There, he developed some of his most iconic characters, including Bob Mackenzie, a lovable beer-guzzling Canadian that would become the heart of the cult classic film Strange Brew. As both a writer and performer, Moranis' portrayals earned him an Emmy Award. Following it up with memorable performances in Ghostbusters, Spaceballs, and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Moranis' career was heading to the skies, but tragedy soon struck. In 1991, Moranis lost his wife to breast cancer, leaving him a single father of 2 young children. Balancing the demands of raising children alone with the increasingly grueling nature of Hollywood's demands was challenging, and one had to give for the other. But while many would find this dilemma to be brainy, Moranis found it easy. He was disillusioned with the attitudes of studio executives and the industry itself, and quietly left Hollywood. He only dabbled in creative projects, such as his work on the 2005 country comedy album The Agoraphobic Cowboy, which earned him a Grammy nomination. Plus, he also served on the advisory committee at Humber College's comedy program, contributing to the next generation of comedians. Though he remained mostly out of the public eye, Rick Moranis shockingly made headlines in 2020. And no, it wasn't for a film comeback. While walking near West 70th Street in Manhattan, he was randomly assaulted, suffering minor injuries to his head, back, and hip. It was captured on security footage, and the alleged attacker was arrested a month later on November 14th. While this event was certainly not the way fans hoped to see Moranis back in the news, it sparked a wave of support and affection for the comedian who had given them so many beloved characters over the years. To date, he remains a cherished figure in the industry, a man who gave up a speaking career for those he loved the most. Number 3, Linda Blair. Born on January 22, 1959, saying Linda's Blair career could have reached more iconic heights is a massive understatement. I mean, who can forget her role as Regan MacNeil in The Exorcist in 1973? As one of the original scream queens in the industry, her chilling portrayal of a young girl possessed by a spirit still sends shivers down the spines of horror fans. It's no surprise she won a Golden Globe and an Academy Award nomination. At just 5 years old, Linda Blair started her career as a child model, appearing in prominent ads for brands such as Sears, JCPenney, and Macy's. Within a year, she secured a contract for a series of print ads in the New York Times. Growing in the industry, Linda's first break in entertainment came with a regular role on the daytime soap opera Hidden Faces in 1968. But while her next film roles were relatively modest, everything changed in 1972 when she was cast from over 600 applicants to play the role of Regan MacNeil in The Exorcist. She was finally a bigwig and was sure to get a bright future despite only being a teenager. But don't take this to mean her life suddenly became perfect. No, the film's success was rather a blessing and a curse. On one hand, Linda's performance earned critical acclaim for its intensity and depth, bringing a new level of complexity to the genre. But on the other hand, it also thrust her into the limelight of intense public scrutiny. The film's portrayal of religious themes was considered blasphemous by many, and Linda, being a young actress at the time, became the target of both media sensationalism and public backlash. It was so severe that Warner Brothers had to send her on an international press tour to prove she was just a regular teenager. As the years passed, Linda found herself in increasing trouble. At just 18, she was arrested in 1977 for drug possession and conspiracy to sell drugs. She pleaded guilty to a reduced charge of conspiracy to possess cocaine, resulting in probation and mandatory public appearances to raise awareness about drug abuse. And yes, the legal consequences were significant. It completely altered her career trajectory, and she struggled to find the same kind of mainstream success she had enjoyed earlier. She mostly featured in low-budget horror movies, where she still faced critical backlash, including multiple Razzie Award nominations and even winning twice for Best Actress. Despite her later struggles in Hollywood, Blair found a new purpose as an activist. She transitioned into a vegan lifestyle in 2001 and co-authored the book Going Vegan that same year. In 2004, she founded the Linda Blair World Heart Foundation, an NGO dedicated to rescuing and rehabilitating animals. While Blair failed to reach her expected heights, it's thrilling to see that she's still able to live her best life. But hey, before we go into the next fallen star on our list, why don't you subscribe and turn on those post notifications? By doing so, you'll stay updated and never miss our latest explorations into the rise and fall of cinema's greatest talents. Speaking of the latter, we've got number 2, Bert Reynolds. Many younger Hollywood fans might not realize it, but Bert Reynolds was once at the very top of Hollywood's elite. During the late 1970s and early 1980s, he reigned as the box office king and was regarded as one of the biggest movie stars, not just in America, but the world. From 1978 through 82, he was the industry's highest-grossing actor, thanks to hits like Deliverance and Smokey and the Bandit. However, his consistent focus on similar roles made it difficult for him to be seen as a serious actor, and when his popularity started to fade, there was little he could do to save his career. Most of the projects he chose in the late 80s and much of the 90s, including Malone, Physical Evidence, Cop and a Half, and Mad Dog Time, were frankly mediocre or box office flops. He began to get ridiculed by critics until 1997, when there was a brief resurgence in his career. Cast as Jack Horner in Paul Thomas Anderson's Boogie Nights, Reynolds was praised for his nuance and depth, a side of him that audiences had rarely seen. He received his first and only Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor, and for a moment, it seemed like Hollywood Burt Reynolds was set to make the comeback of the century. Leading up to the event, Reynolds was tipped to win the award until he made a terrible mistake. He publicly criticized the film and his character, calling them disgusting, a poor decision in the grand scheme of things. His negative comments were poorly received within the Academy and the larger industry. And when the Oscars were awarded, Robin Williams took home the statue for Good Will Hunting, and Reynolds was once again in the abyss. After Boogie Nights, Reynolds continued to appear in films, but most were poorly received and quickly forgotten. His later roles, such as those in The Dukes of Hazzard and the remake of The Longest Yard, both in 2005, failed to make an impact and only served to highlight the disparity between the promise of his earlier career and its ultimate trajectory. Reflecting on his career, Reynolds himself once said that he made about 90 movies and only 4 of them were worth watching. But whether you choose to agree with his statement or not, you'd be hard-pressed to say his track record didn't show a trend of missed opportunities. By the mid-1990s, Reynolds was a shadow of himself financially. His hit TV series Evening Shade was canceled, he suffered from a messy divorce, and he declared bankruptcy in 1996. At the time of his bankruptcy filing, he listed $6.65 million in assets against $11.2 million in debt. Think that's sad? Wait till you hear the next sad, anticlimactic tale of the next man on our list. Any guesses on who it might be? Here's a hint. He shared the screen with Burt Reynolds.
I'm gonna hit it.
Number 1. Michael Vincent. Sometimes I wonder where it went wrong for this hunk of a man. Apart from being one of Hollywood's most promising stars, Michael Vincent had everything at his disposal to mark a new era. With his surfer build and natural charm, Vincent broke into films in the late 1960s and quickly became a fixture in action dramas, featuring in hits like The Mechanic and a dashing stuntman in Hooper, alongside Burt Reynolds. But enough of reminiscing, let's talk about the very beginning. Born in Denver, Colorado in July 1944 to Lloyd Whittley, Vincent, and Doris Jane, the actor had a strange upbringing. On the one hand, his father was a World War II pilot in the U.S. Army, but on the other, his life was far from being straight and narrow. His grandfather and uncles were notorious bank robbers in the 1920s and 1930s, but while the latter faced violent deaths at the hands of the law, Jan Michael carried on their rebellious spirit. He hated the strict discipline instilled by his father in the U.S. Army and wanted to be a free spirit, a man who never played by the rules. In 1968, Jan Michael made a dramatic entrance into Hollywood. His striking looks helped him bypass the competition, landing roles in popular shows like Dragnet 1967 and Bonanza, despite having no prior acting experience. Growing in strength, he kept honing his skills until his biggest breakthrough yet, the 1983 ABC's miniseries The Winds of War. Playing the son of a naval officer and the love interest of Ally McGrath's character, Jan Michael shone like a million stars. The 18-hour program drew tens of millions of viewers, easily matching the biggest shows at the time. The following year, Vincent debuted in CBS's action series Airwolf as Stringfellow Hawk, where he earned a reported salary of $40,000 per episode. With youth, looks, wealth, and fame on his side, Jan Michael had it all. However, his erratic behavior and cocaine use soon caused him to lose everything. By 1980, it was clear to Hollywood insiders that Jan Michael's fame had gotten to his head. Reports started emerging from his film and TV projects about his destructive addiction to alcohol and other substances. And unlike his appearance, the stories of his behavior were far from appealing. By the show's third season, Jan Michael was so down bad that he struggled to remember his lines, forgot his colleagues, and had difficulty standing, let alone walking. At first, the producers did all they could to accommodate the new Jan Michael, but even elastic has its limit. They eventually fired the heartthrob from his own show and moved forward with an all-new cast. But while you'd think a fall from grace would be enough to kickstart a career comeback, the worst was yet to come. His wife, Bonnie Poorman, who had been with him since his rise to fame in the late 1960s, filed for divorce, and given what followed, it's fair to say that she made the right decision. As his career disintegrated, Jan Michael Vincent's addiction worsened, and his volatile behavior escalated. Ray Parker Jr. experienced this firsthand after filming Enemy Territory, revealing to the media that Vincent had attacked him with a wheelchair. Fans forgave Jan Michael's destructive addiction because, let's face it, he still had the face of a hunky angel. But all that changed in 1996. While driving with his housekeeper, he crashed his car, causing serious injuries to both his passenger and himself. In the aftermath of the crash, Jan Michael Vincent's once celebrated life permanently deteriorated. He sustained a broken neck and severe facial injuries, and paramedics had to perform an emergency procedure to keep him alive. Unfortunately, this procedure damaged his vocal cords, resulting in a permanently raspy voice. At the time of the accident, Jan Michael had been filming Red Line, but instead of canceling the entire show, he appeared with a disfigured, swollen, and scarred face. He even wore his real hospital ID bracelet in the film. All hope for the actor's revival was dashed in the wind when his second wife, Joanne Robinson, filed for divorce, citing disturbing reasons beyond his personal decline, including physical violence and severe mistreatment. She even claimed he had inflicted black eyes and broken bones. Once praised for his striking looks, Jan Michael Vincent spent his final years as a shadow of himself. His long history of addiction led to severe health issues, including an infection from a peripheral arterial disease that forced him to amputate his right leg. But hey, if you're still not convinced that no other Hollywood actor has had a bigger fall from grace, what if I told you that no one even knew Jan Michael Vincent passed away in February 2019? Yep, it wasn't until a month later that TMZ reported the Airwolf's passing. With that, we close the painful chapter of the lives and times of 10 of the biggest actors in the 1970s who either failed to reach the heights expected of them or crashed and burned in their journey to fame. If you've enjoyed this, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and let us know in the comments which Hollywood fate hurt you the most. Already done that? Great. Your journey is just beginning. Click on the video currently displaying on your screen to discover even more surprising stories about Hollywood's biggest stars.